Other than Jesus himself, David is one of the characters of the Bible that we know the most about. There are the most stories recorded about David's life, and probably the most famous story about David is the story of the day he faced the giant Goliath. Here's a young shepherd boy who was sent to the front of the battle lines just to bring food and check in on his brothers for his father who was back home. And when he gets there, he sees this Philistine giant who is taunting the Israelite army. And there's something in him that rises up in that moment. While everyone else is running away in fear, David stands up and says, "Who is this guy that he would dare to defy the God of heaven's armies?" And everyone else in the situation saw a giant, but David saw a victory. David saw an opportunity. And I love what was in David's heart in this moment. He was so full of faith. He was in this place where he was like, I know God will just show up and rescue us. And here's why. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 37, he says this, "The Lord who has rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." David had such a strong confidence in the faithfulness of God. His heart was full of faith that God would show up and rescue him. He had no doubt about it. He was like, I've been through this before and I've seen God show up. This is a really cool thing that happens too when we share our stories of faith. To be able to encourage someone else and say, hey, I've been through the same thing you're walking through and I saw God show up in my life. And it builds our own faith when we look back at our story and say, I went through some hard things, but I've seen God show up every time. I want to have a heart like David's. And we all face giants in our life. Giants in our lives is anything that stands opposed to God's plans and purposes for our life. And it's this great way of being able to say, I've got some history with God. I know his character and his nature. I know he's going to show up for me in this situation. Even though I'm facing something that looks impossible, even though there's the opportunity to be overwhelmed, I trust God because I know he's going to show up on my behalf. And so my question for us today is this. When I face obstacles in my life, do I have the confidence in the faithfulness of God? When I come up against hard things, do I still know that God is at work and that he's going to show up on my behalf? Or do I kind of fall into a place where I get overwhelmed with fearful thoughts or anxiety, negativity, or self-pity? Or can I stand up like David did and see an opportunity for God to show up in my life?